Okay, good morning. We can do this. Good morning. Here we go. Okay. There's more coffee in the lobby for those of you who are in need of it. Hi, I'm Rob Rutenbaugh. I'm the Senior Vice Chancellor for Research here at the University of Pittsburgh. I have the honor of running this interesting panel, Leveraging Tech Opportunities to Advance Healthcare. To start, I'd just like to say that we have an extremely diverse set of panelists on the technical side of advanced health sciences. We have working clinicians and working engineers and working social scientists. We have folks from schools of medicine and engineering and the sciences and even business. We have MDs and we have PhDs, and we have some folks with both. Full disclosure, I am not one of those. And venture capital is also represented here. So let me start with a very, very quick introduction to everybody on our panel. Peter Gianaros is professor of psychology here at the University of Pittsburgh. His work focuses on the neurobiology of psychological stress and how the brain influences and is influenced by both biological and behavioral risk factors. Jana Keinersdorfer is professor of biomedical engineering at Carnegie Mellon. Her lab designs non-invasive imaging methods for disease detection with an emphasis on brain health, including both human and dolphin brains, by the way. We're gonna ask her about the dolphins. She's leading the new brain-body behavior moonshot from the Carnegie Mellon College of Engineering. David Okonkwo is professor of neurological surgery in Pitt School of Medicine and director of Pitt's Neurotrauma Clinical Trials Center. He's also director of neurotrauma at UPMC, our hospital system partner, and also executive vice president at UPMC Enterprises, our prominent local VC partner, and he is also the team neurosurgeon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Liran Pantanowicz is chair of the Department of Pathology in the University of Pitt School of Medicine. His work focuses on digital pathology and AI, and he has a leadership role in Pitt's recent launch of our new Computational Pathology and AI Center of Excellence, which is called CPACE in the Pitt Med School. And finally, Andrew Lee is on the faculty in operations research at the Carnegie Mellon Tepper School of Business, and his research focuses on statistics, optimization, and machine learning with applications to operations, management, and medicine. And some of his work is supported by the new CMU Tepper Healthcare Initiative. So, at a kind of a macro level here, we have folks who image brains, we have folks who build the imaging tech to let us image brains, and we have folks who open up brains to fix them after things like traumatic injury. We have folks building next-gen digital pathology tools to help us fight diseases like cancer, and folks building tools at the hospital health system level to help us make difficult decisions and trade-offs smarter and better. And across all of those areas and expertise, lots of AI, lots of machine learning, lots of advanced digital tech. So I'm going to start with basically one big core question to everybody, and I'll kind of go down and do people in order. What do you find most interesting and exciting at this intersection of health and AI and technology in your world? As I was telling people in the green world, what gets you up every morning and says, wow, I'm really glad to go to the lab, or go to the office, or go talk to my students, or go to the hospital? What's exciting? So I'm going to pick on David first, and I warned him about this because his resume reads like he's the guy at this intersection. He's a working neurosurgeon, a researcher using AI to do stuff like predict the long-term outcomes for traumatic brain injury interventions, and in his copious spare time, he's on the leadership team at UPMC Enterprises doing venture investments. So what's exciting here, David?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. There are two things from my perspective. One is medical superintelligence, and the second is the acceleration of discovery. So what do I mean by that? When it comes to medical superintelligence, the patient with a very difficult problem, like the typical patient that I see in clinic, has already seen 5 other doctors who have not been able to quite get to the point of understanding what's wrong with that patient. And then it's my job to take it to the next level and figure it out. The solution to every problem in life and medicine begins with a diagnosis. Well, there was a very fascinating report this summer out of the New England Journal of Medicine where they took a series of difficult cases that had been published in the New England Journal over years and handed them off to AI platforms. And the Microsoft AI Diagnostic Orchestrator was the base of that effort. And in essence, not surprisingly, if you combine 2 AI platforms, you outperform a group of medical experts. Now, that's not really how it works in real life, because in real life, we just keep going and going and going until we get to the answer. But if we can leverage AI to accelerate that process, then our intellectual capital and resources is focused on fixing the problem, and we can de-stress the problem of diagnosing the issue. On the acceleration of discovery side, that is where we're starting to see this renaissance in and of itself. And we have morphed from the era of individual scientists in windowless rooms going after things from a genius perspective. And we are blocks away from where Jonas Salk, in essence, sat in a windowless room until he solved the polio vaccine issue and changed the world. We morphed into the team science era because each individual isn't smart enough to tackle the more and more complex problems, so we needed team science. And now we're into the AI-enabled era. So Dr. Freeland in the last session mentioned a blood test that I helped bring to life to diagnose concussions and traumatic brain injuries. That was a 20-plus year effort where we started with a small group of protein targets, and then we had to work our way to the point of figuring out which of those targets were the best. But that ignored the tens of thousands of other proteins that are probably just as likely as the 4 that we started off by testing. So now, whether it's what we're trying to do or whether it's what the Pitt Drug Discovery Institute is doing, you can leverage large data sets, machine learn your way to a place where you have a better sense of what the high zone targets are. You can then apply those against these libraries of tens of thousands of whatever, proteins, genes, et cetera, and then you can get to a place that it would otherwise have taken thousands of scientists generations to get to the same place. So that's the beautiful thing of what's happening now. We are creating pathways for medical superintelligence, and we are creating pathways to accelerate discoveries to deliver the next phase of diagnostics and treatments.
Great, thank you. All right, let's stay on kind of the brain side of things for the panel. Pete, you're working on crazy, difficult problems of understanding how biology and exogenous factors like stress and socioeconomic status and environment combine to impact brain health. So for you, what's exciting here? No pressure. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Well, it's an honor to be here. So as Rob mentioned, my work is at the intersection of a few complicated areas. So in one line of research, we're trying to understand how the brain connects stressful experiences, depression, and negative emotions with a person's risk for heart disease. So one of the interesting things that we've learned in the last few years, combining machine learning and brain imaging methods, is that we can use machine learning to identify specific patterns of brain activity that people express during experiences of psychological stress or negative emotions to predict, for example, the severity of atherosclerosis they show in their carotid arteries and other cardiovascular risk factors. And these predictions are not explained by conventional risk factors for heart disease, cigarette smoking, lipids. So there's a little bit of value added to essentially doing brain phenotyping in this space. As Rob mentioned, the other line of work that we do focuses on social health inequalities. And here we've been trying to understand how living in disadvantaged neighborhoods in Pittsburgh might contribute to premature brain aging and risk for dementia. So in this line of work, we're combining machine learning methods with structural brain imaging to essentially create biomarkers of brain age. And like one thing that we've learned recently is that like people who live in the most disadvantaged neighborhoods in Pittsburgh relative to those in the most advantaged neighborhoods show about 7 years additional premature brain aging. So these are just some of the things that we're doing and how we're integrating machine learning methods with imaging technologies.
Thanks. Okay, let's keep going with the brain stuff. Jana, you're leading the new brain-body behavior moonshot in engineering at Carnegie Mellon. So can you tell us a little bit about what that's about and how that fits at this tech AI health intersection? And also, you got to talk at least for a little bit about the dolphins and why we care about the fact that dolphins can hold their breath for 30 minutes for human brains.
Well, let me start with the moonshot. The moonshot at CMU is it's funded by the College of Engineering, and it's an initiative called Body-Brain Behavior. What we really want to do is figure out how does the body influence the brain, cognitive function, what can we do to optimize brain function. Like the prime example is if you put an introvert on stage, on a panel, she's probably going to get a bit nervous. My heart rate is going up, blood pressure is going up, but I know what I can do. I can just take a deep breath, which lowers my heart rate. We all are aware of that. If you're nervous, take a deep breath, you're going to perform better. Now that's trivial. There are so many ways we can modulate our body that has an effect on function. If you fall asleep in a car, you have to wake up to react faster. And so generally we're asking, how can we leverage this interaction between body and brain to create closed-loop systems for better human cognitive performance? And so at the core of this, what we need is better devices to monitor the brain. Like I'm obsessed with my watch telling me that my heart rate is too high or I should stand up, but we don't really have the equivalent for the brain. And so one of the goals for the moonshot is really to create a plethora of devices that are wearables, that are allow us to do continuous monitoring of the brain, like a fitness tracker for the brain. And so what's super exciting about this is we're starting to really think, okay, extreme environments, extreme physiology has an effect on the brain. That's in a neurocritical care setting. We know that there's a lot going on. There's blood pressure medication that you can give. There's surgical intervention. But I care about extreme environments, and that includes hypoxia. So it's like what happens to the brain after prolonged breath holds, essentially. And so I happen to work with dolphins as well, with marine mammals. We are trying to build brain sensors for marine mammals for preservation purposes. But I'm also really just intrigued. How does a dolphin hold their breath for 30 minutes? And why is the brain still perfused? And so we're building sensors for marine mammals because we care about marine mammal preservation, but it really is a unique opportunity for us to learn how do we optimize perfusion in a patient that no longer breathes before being intubated, or how do we have better ventilator settings because the brain needs better perfusion, or during doing any kind of surgery. So while it's fun to work with dolphins, they do actually help us understand how to optimize brain perfusion in humans as well.
Cool, thanks. All right, let's flip over to the pathology side of the world. Liran, you've been working on computational pathology for many, many years, and we know AI is coming for lots of diagnostic applications really hard and really fast. And as we heard on the panel that preceded us, these digital technologies have been present on the diagnostic side of your world for a long time, but here we are with a new wave of generative AI techniques. So what's interesting in your space?
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and to the organizers for inviting me. What's exciting for me and what's exciting in our space is pathology, which has been around for centuries. I mean, ever since the microscope was invented. We have moved to digital workflows like everyone else in healthcare. That means we have gone from a paper-based environment to electronic medical records. And when we look at glass slides with patients' cells and tissues under a microscope, that's a very analog world. We're now able to scan and digitize all of that. So now that we have digital data, whether it's text, tabular, or image data, that's very exciting because we can leverage technology now to analyze and manipulate that data. And so we can do that for diagnostic purposes. And pathologists and technologists we work with have limitations, human limitations. They cannot look at every cell and make sure that every cell is screened and correctly diagnosed. And we don't have a crystal ball. A pathologist microscope is not a crystal ball that I can look at someone's brain tumor or breast cancer and predict where they'll be in 5-10 years' time or which therapies they'll respond to. We've resorted to tests like molecular tests to help us with precision medicine to more precisely make diagnosis and prognoses. But patients have limited tissue and we have limited resources to do that. So we've been using machine learning and AI to do all of that work. I like to be very practical and actually deploy that stuff, not just sort of talk the talk, but walk the walk. And so here at UPMC, we have algorithms that help us with diagnostic pathology work. At UPMC Shadyside, where we do most of the men's prostate core needle biopsies for many years now, we've been using AI to find cancers that many people may not detect because they're rare or subtle, and even, you know, a small focus where the cancer's invaded a nerve, and that makes a big difference for patients. At UPMC McGee Women's Hospital, where we do most of the PAP tests in the system, we're asking humans to look at 200,000 cells on a slide to make sure that they don't miss one or two that could predict, you know, who's got cervical cancer. And so now we're using AI to screen every single cell and do that. Those relied mostly on traditional AI algorithms, but as you've heard, we are now in the era of Gen AI, where we can not just use data that exists to generate AI, but we can create data that never existed to help us, such as, you know, generative AI algorithms like ChatGPT. And that's one of the reasons I recruited Dr. Hooman Rashidi to Pittsburgh, who's our Associate Dean of AI, to help me build this Computational Pathology and AI Center of Excellence, where we can master AI algorithms, both traditional and generative AI algorithms. Because I knew that when a pathologist comes to work, whether it's at UPMC or any system, they have been trained for 1 or 2 decades to have 1,000 algorithms in their brain. I need to be able to diagnose any disease, lymphoma, carcinoma, melanoma, in any tissue, brain, breast, etc. So how do we actually build AI algorithms to do all that? If I have to wait for commercial vendors to supply us those algorithms, they'll never deliver all of them because many of them don't have a good return on investment. They're not going to make a whole lot of money, especially, for example, at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, we have kids who come with rare diseases. And so I don't think any company is going to make an algorithm that only helps 1 kid a year. So we've been able to also make our own AI tools in the space of generative AI. Dr. Rashidi and his team have made an AI algorithm called Report Genie. It's PIT GPT plus, so it's able to run on a workstation without having to connect to the internet, and we don't have to worry about patient privacy, and we don't have to worry about cybersecurity issues. And the whole purpose of that, and you know, he's been testing it himself, and as I said, we like to talk the talk. It allows him to diagnose a bone marrow biopsy from someone who's got leukemia and lymphoma in minutes, you know, with really smart reporting, as opposed to taking many hours. And so if we can reduce that turnaround time, get that result to a patient who has cancer, you know, it speeds up the whole process, reduces their anxiety, and improves their healthcare experience.
Cool. Thank you. So, Andrew, you're in a very different part of the research landscape. You're a working business school professor, applying mathematical tools from operations research to things like capital D decision problems in healthcare. So, from your very different point in this landscape, what's exciting for you?
Yeah, so I'll give 2 answers here. I'll keep the business school hat on, which will mean like maybe the answers are going to be a bit more boring. The first is I want to build off of what Laurent and David were saying, like as far as, it's 2025, right? At some point, we should talk about LLMs and how that's kind of affecting everything. Business school hat on, boring answer, right? I mean, we think about what can these LLMs, what can this technology, what can this capability do today, right? That's not a problem unique to medicine. Every single industry is dealing right now with that exact question. How do we leverage this new capability that essentially was dropped from Santa Claus in 2022, right? I think as far as like what we can do today with this thing called ChatGPT, I mean, like the consensus seems to be, maybe I'll borrow, so this guy Terry Tao is the most consensus smartest living mathematician in the world right now. Right, just a couple days ago, I mean, he's also, by the way, famously like super into AI, language models, and how they can be used, right? And he's constantly thinking about how language models can be used in his field, which is discovering new math, right? The same way that in medicine we're trying to discover new ideas for medicine. Just a couple days ago, he said probably the best use of these language models, let's say over the next 2 years, is not to take the absolute most sophisticated models and try to apply them to our most challenging problems, but rather to take, I don't know, what you'd call medium-powered models if you want, and use them to attack medium-level problems. And by medium-level problems, he meant problems that actually a human expert could solve given enough time. Right? Which is to say the purpose of LLMs, of your ChatGPT, of your Copilot, of these models right now is to just speed up, make more efficient our human experts. Right? I think that, I mean, like obvious examples in medicine are right, clinicians have to do a ton of literature review, I believe. Right? Or unfortunately, just like reading a ton of health records and patient records, right? These are things that you'd expect a certain pipeline where these language models would, again, just assist, speed up those processes. Right? I think that's where like a nice opportunity is, right? But I think like more broadly, I think that's a nice thing. Again, every single field is contending with this right now, right? How do we deal with kind of this new capability that we just learned about a couple years ago and kind of where it's headed? Thinking about where it's headed like 10 years from now is a big question, and I think as difficult as asking like, what's the stock market going to do over the next 10 years, right? But we have like really nice opportunities right now. And I think this is the way the system is set up, right? It's a very nice opportunity because of kind of the independence we give clinicians, right? There's a very nice opportunity for them to leverage this tool more than, let's say, the Fortune 490 companies that I'm constantly talking to. My other answer might even be more boring, right? Separate from language models or image models or anything there. We've essentially, like 10 years ago, we'd solved the problem of like what's called nowadays analytical AI. That term analytical AI is very new, but I mean, I really like what it refers to. It refers to like boring AI. It refers to machine learning. It refers to like your data's in a spreadsheet and you're trying to make some sort of prediction. Right? We've essentially solved every problem around that, like 10 years ago. It takes time to implement these things, right? There's a lot of issues around data collection and trust and all that. But I think like very much in medicine, the low-hanging fruit is still like finding the problems and for which we can use that analytical AI to address. Right? My experience is any sort of natural problem that comes from a clinician, something like, I don't know, can we predict a 30-day readmit for sickle cell patients? Right? Even just a very basic data set. You apply what, I don't know, like what our colleagues in machine learning, right, would consider like basic methods. You apply those methods, right? We see like incredible accuracy. I think the only thing that's missing right now is just kind of connecting again like those problems, those data sets to those methods. But extremely low-hanging fruit, right? And this is the same like spiel I would give again to maybe we'll call it like the Fortune 470 companies, right? The bottom, take out the top 30, right? This is low-hanging fruit, again, kind of for everybody.
Thanks. I didn't know there was a Fortune 470.
That's my term, yeah.
All right.
Don't use that.
You should copyright that, right? You should that's good, actually. You should copyright that right away. Okay. I want to ask people to think a bit broadly, and I want to ask what success looks like. Huge, wild, sort of macroscopic, pan-galactic, level success for any of the problems you're working on. And the way I'll preface this is, everybody up here is a working faculty member. And we have sort of day-to-day, I would say, kind of notions of success. I solved a problem. I got an acceptance on a paper at a conference or a journal. I finally filed the patent. My PhD student defended their thesis. There's all kinds of extraordinarily satisfying get on first base, maybe a double every once in a while, sorts of things. But I'm interested in what grand slams look like. Sorry, it's baseball season. Look like for everybody. What would the giant swing for the fences win be for any of the problems you're working on? Oh, what are the barriers to sort of making that happen? Are we just waiting for time? Is it capital, culture? What's exciting? And I'm happy to do this for anybody who wants to. You can all look up through the stars for 1 second and sort of think about this. But I'm happy to just let anybody jump in. David or Liran,
Well,
who are looking at me meaningfully. Sure.
May I offer just a brief reality check?
Yes.
If you ask me, how does AI influence what I do in medicine today? The answer is, it doesn't. And we have to be cognizant of the limitations here. At the end of the day, AI can leverage the data it's given. It doesn't know about the data to which it has no exposure. And I mentioned that the most common patient that comes to see me has already seen 5 other doctors. And then I engage in the art of medicine. And I sit there. And one look at the patient is worth 1,000 iterative LLMs. One look at the patient is worth 1,000 forays into machine learning. Because if you spend time with the patient, you will catch the subtle thing, or you will venture into a place that no one else had thought of before, and then you arrive at the diagnosis. Okay? I was connected to Elon Musk because he was trying to solve a problem, and he was told, well, by someone on one of his boards, I know someone in Pittsburgh who figures things out that other people don't. And so he and I went down this path, and it turns out I figured out the answer to his problem that he was trying to solve. And he asked me to give him the same data set that I used to solve the problem so he could give it to Grok. And Grok failed. Grok failed because Grok didn't have all of those years and years and years that I have invested in paying attention and trying to get better and better and better at what I do. And Grok, or the Microsoft AI Diagnostic Orchestrator, or insert AI platform here, cannot execute the art of medicine. So I think we first need a reality check, that there are ceilings to what AI can do for us. However, I'm all in, okay? And I am trying as hard as I can to get as good as I can, as fast as I can, and these things are going to make all of us better in some form or fashion. When Elon said to me that we're 4 years away from AI taking over everything, I reminded him, like, well, Grok failed yesterday. Okay, so we'll see what this looks like in 4 years. It better be better than where we are today. We have absolute paths towards success. We can hit a number of grand slams. We can achieve a number of victories. But I would actually keep it relatively simple. And to me, success would mean that I get to invest more of my intellectual capital in the patient than in the process.
Liran, you want to take a shot?
Yeah. So for me, my measures of success of using AI in my world of the lab and the pathology department is I want to see better outcomes for patients using the AI. I want to see that operationally we are much more efficient, and therefore people are happier with their jobs and not complaining that, you know, there's this huge workload and they never get home in time. And 3, that the administrators are happy with me because we've reduced the cost of healthcare. The problem is that we don't have enough evidence, to be honest, long-term evidence to definitely prove that AI has made an impact on all of those, you know, outcomes. UPMC is a huge healthcare system, and I would like to see us scaling that AI, if it is successful, to all our healthcare facilities so that every patient, when they walk in through whatever door of whatever hospital, whether it's rural or urban Pennsylvania, gets the same level of care, standardization with an expert, you know, pathologist in their pocket. The problem is, Robin, as many of you are aware, we haven't achieved that yet. It's a journey I'm, you know, on, but we haven't achieved it for several reasons. Number one, in order to really use AI, you have to go digital, and so we haven't digitized our whole operation. And one of the hardest things about using AI is for people to go paperless, to be honest. People hate it when I take paper away from them, but you need to do that in order to use AI. So we need to create an IT infrastructure where everything is digital. Next is to make sure we are doing this, that we comply with regulations. And, you know, regulations I don't even think have caught up with AI. So I need to make sure that whatever we do is, you know, ethical, and I haven't biased an algorithm that works well in Pittsburgh and assume that it would work well out in Altoona or elsewhere. The The other thing is, this is very expensive technology. And so what I'm hoping for is that at some point in time, we will get reimbursed for doing this work. There are no billing codes at the moment. So I'd mentioned we have AI to help look at prostate biopsies, but that's an investment UPMC has made without a billing code really for the AI. So, and then the final thing is really to, which is what I think we have achieved, is to create an innovative hub where there's an intersection from those technicians like data scientists, software engineers who know data and machine learning well, but not medicine, versus those doctors, pathologists, who are very computer savvy and want to apply technology, but they don't have the expertise necessarily. So we created that AI center so that we can bring them together and then hopefully, you know, try to solve some of these problems. But it's a journey that we're on.
Okay, thanks. Jana.
I'm coming from a different perspective. I feel like AI is only ever as good as the input, like has been said before. So we are in the forefront of really trying to provide new inputs, new imaging methods, new diagnostic tools, like the engineering, biomedical engineering is all about that. It's like, how do we create tools that do better than a clinical standard? And I'm sometimes shocked with what is available in a hospital. Any one of you have ever had to get an MRI, probably it was a 1.5 Tesla scan. It's really low resolution in comparison to what we have available on the research side. Research is so much more in the future when it comes to signals, to imaging, to data, but it's not in the clinic yet. And so I think for me, success would look like me building something that ultimately David uses in his day-to-day. And there are some opportunities there, not to say hurdles, but let's call it an opportunity. But right now, like I had a conversation with David earlier at breakfast, and we were pointing out that translation of novel technologies should be hard, but not difficult. And right now, I think systems are set up in a way that the translation is sometimes very difficult. There are hurdles, there are red tapes. And so there's an opportunity to really bring engineers and clinicians and hospital settings closer together and kind of streamline the process of whatever my PhD student develops to make it into the clinic, not in 5 years, but within 5 months. And so but I'm excited about it because I think there's an opportunity and I see a lot of it happening in Pittsburgh. So,
Pete, Andrew, want to take a shot? Either?
Yeah, sure. So picking up on some of Jana's themes, I think there are a lot of translational opportunities, particularly in the work that we're doing on stress and emotion. So for example, I'm sure there are a lot of people in the world, maybe even in this audience, who want to know what their brain is doing during stress and what it means for their health and what they could do about it. I think the other work that we're doing on like social health inequalities, I think there are opportunities to influence social policy, public health policy there. In terms of barriers or opportunities, a lot of what we've done so far, we've only like validated algorithms on hundreds of people, and that's about what you can afford with like a typical NIH grant. So I think one of the biggest areas to try to move into is just growing biobanks, getting more data for training and testing, and optimizing a lot of our algorithms.
Sure. So my last, I mean, for me, it's just one word. It's and the question was like home runs, potential home runs, right? I mean, it's around data, essentially, right? If you want to build like the health version of ChatGPT, I mean, we should talk about like what it takes to build ChatGPT. What it takes to build a ChatGPT is data, and essentially it's all of the quality English on the internet. Fortunately, there's a way that a team can invest enough to scrape all of that. If somebody had a centralized version of all health records right now, relatively clean, I mean, this would be like $1 trillion product, just the data. $1 trillion might actually be an underestimate, right? Considering like the percentage of of just US GDP that is healthcare, right? I mean, something like that is what's missing right now to build Dr. GPT, right? We absolutely need some data set like that. Unfortunately, like as I understand data in medicine, is it's siloed, it's not necessarily clean, sometimes it's like handwritten, right? Not even digitized. So again, home runs, yeah, my home run answer. I'm not saying, this violates so many privacy and regulation, whatever, but yeah, I mean, to the extent that we could have a data set like that and hand it to like tech folks, the products that would be generated from that, I mean, even home run this is more like 3 home runs in a game, right? This would be absolutely massive.
Yeah, we just saw 3 home runs in a game, so yeah.
Yeah, it was on purpose.
Yeah, good. Nicely done. Okay, since we just have a few minutes left, I've got one final question for anybody who wants to take a shot at this. Pretty much everybody on this group has been working sort of across the sort of technologist-clinician boundary. So those of you on the STEM side have clinical partners. Those of you on the clinical side have STEM partners. For personal context, I have a bunch of engineering degrees, and I spent part of my PhD on site at the Mayo Clinic, where I was the computer engineer guy building the DSP chain for some of the early CT kind of scanner stuff, so just sort of stuff on Jan's side of the world. And it was wild and weird and cool, right? It was just very interesting being being the engineer in a room full of stethoscopes. It was fun. It was interesting. What's your advice on doing this well, right? Or not doing it well, right? And I'm happy to have anybody, kind of sort of chime in here, because I think one of the things that we see, Jan even said this just explicitly, like more of this is probably what we need to sort of move this stuff forward. Thoughts?
Rob, for me, I think there are 2 things. For now, even though we're using a few AI algorithms, we are using humans to monitor the AI. MD versus AI. And I think it's one of the things I've asked CPACE to do is to have AI monitor the AI. So I know it's hard enough to get it into practice, but these algorithms drift over time for many reasons. And so my concern is that how do we keep track of that and monitor it? So one thing we're working on is AI to monitor the AI. And the second thing is to start educating people who will be using the AI more than us, which is medical students and allied healthcare students. We're fortunate that our dean of the School of Medicine has, had the foresight to have an associate dean of AI, Dr. Rashidi, and so we are, now helping introduce AI into the medical school curriculum. I love that because very few medical students chose pathology as an area to specialize in, thinking that, I don't want to be in a morgue and doing autopsies all the time. But now they have a very different view of what pathology is about. It's, looking at digital images and using AI to make predictions of, who will live and not respond to therapy. And so by introducing pathology to medical students and at the same time teaching them about AI, they're much more inclined to go into our field.
Can I connect something that you're saying to something that Andrew said? My perspective on this is that we should leverage the wisdom of the crowd. And if you learn and study the Oxford English Dictionary, it was basically the original form of crowdsourcing to get to the first documented use of every word in the English language, and it's a remarkable success story. And that is what was possible in the late 1800s. But what you're talking about, everything that we do in research is by voluntary consent from research subjects. And I think that people would be surprised at just how many people and citizens of this world would voluntarily contribute their medical data to a process that would deliver a Dr. GPT to the world. So I think that we should embrace the concept of crowdsourcing this.
Okay, and I think that's brilliantly timed to be the exact last word, since our flashy timer just went off up here. So, audience, how about a round of applause for our scientists and technologists and engineers and mathematicians and clinicians on this panel. Thanks, everybody.